Welcome to part 3 of Conversation of the Decade. And this is where we have some real good fun and dive into Rajiv's book. Rajiv, let us talk about your book, The Future of Power. What made you choose this title?
Well, that's a great question. When I write a book, it goes through so many working titles. And each working title represents a particular aspect of the book, a particular focus of the book. And as the focus changes, new things get added that I get a different working title. So there was a time when the working title was Algorithms and Beings. The algorithms representing the machine intelligence and beings representing the consciousness. And this title, Algorithms and Beings, representing the tension, the collaboration, the conflicts between these two. And that was, but then some people felt it's very metaphysical and very abstract. The average person will say, why should I worry about it? So then I had another one called The Battle for Agency, which is about your privacy, your agency being hacked. And are you really in control, or are you on autopilot? Are you being dumbed down because the machines are smarter than you? So I went through that. And again, people said this would be brilliant for people who have a background in psychology, social psychology. But the average guy says, I'm interested in a job. So what's in it for me? So you need to talk about jobs, and you need to talk about more materialistic things that are at stake. So that's when I started saying, okay, that's interesting. So I decided that there is the physical body, there is the psychological, emotional, mental body inside. So at the physical level, you have the battleground of economics, jobs, this kind of thing, unemployment. That's a sort of physical health of a society. And there is AI is playing a big role in disrupting that. Also, at the physical level is geopolitics, military, weapons, all of these kind of things. So these two, the economic, jobs, educational impact, that is one kind of physical infrastructure of the world and of a society. And the geopolitics of weapons and military is another kind of physical level. So those two battlegrounds are sort of at the physical level. And then the two battlegrounds, which are number 3 and 4, are more at the inner level. One is about agency, and are we being hacked? And is our agency in the control of digital networks, or are we fully in control ourselves? And of course, the battle for self, which goes even further and even deeper and says, is this notion of who I am being questioned and being challenged and disrupted, because now these AI systems are going to give me pleasures, artificial gratification, and I'm no longer looking inside for the bliss that our Vedic tradition teaches. I'm more looking at somebody pushing buttons and buying into some streaming service, buying into some augmented reality to keep myself, engaged and distracted. So I had two outer world, bodily, physical kind of disruptions, which are the battlegrounds 1 and 2, and two of them on the inner world, the psychological world and the spiritual world, which are battlegrounds 3 and 4. So I came up with this sort of 4 battlegrounds map. And then I said that I should pick one country, one major place, and apply all of this as a case study to illustrate with concrete data, concrete examples, facts, how all of these 4 will play out. And so the battleground 5 became the case study of India. How is India affected? And I called it a stress test on India. So that's how the 5 battlegrounds emerged.
Thank you, Rajiv. So let's dive into the battlegrounds. Tell us more about battleground 1, economy, industry, education, and jobs. It sounds like an important subject to me, Rajiv.
Yes. And when I sequenced these in the book, my favorites were the ones that are more subtle. But then people said, to get somebody's attention right away, you should in the beginning, I mean, I have so many people reviewing and commenting and giving feedbacks. I don't listen to everybody, but I do take note of how the public will respond. And so I thought it was a wise input that I should start out with a battleground, which is very pragmatic, which affects a lot of young people. They're all looking for jobs. Everybody's concerned about the economy. So here's a takeoff point where we can start the conversation. So the battleground for economies basically says that AI is like another industrial revolution. Those who are the inventors and who have all this technology, and it needs a large amount of capital to deploy these models on a global scale, they are going to become like the new industrial powers, be they governments, be they private industries. And those who don't have it are going to be second tier at best, maybe as employees working for them, and third tier, which means they are not neither producers of that nor employees working there, but they are sort of like consumers, and they may or may not have a whole lot of jobs or very menial jobs. So this disruption of the economy, I think, is a very serious matter. A lot of people said that, the Industrial Revolution created more jobs than it destroyed, which is true, but it created these jobs in England and destroyed the jobs in India. So the whole colonial enterprise happened because of the colonization of India by Britain and colonization of many parts of the world by France, etc., would not have been possible if they were not industrial powers. So same way, yes, AI will create a lot of jobs, but for whom? And it'll destroy jobs, but whose jobs? It's not the same people necessarily. So some people, some industries, some communities will lose a lot and others will gain a lot. And you cannot say that it all balances out, because it disrupts societies and disrupts the global system. The world order gets disrupted by all this. So I see AI a faster, more accelerated version of what happened in the Industrial Revolution, because that took 50 years. There wasn't so much capital available. There wasn't so much knowledge being transmitted very quickly. People had to be trained. It took a while for the industry to spread from place to place. Now there's global venture capital. Money is available, lots of money available. If you have a model that works and makes money, tons of money will come your way. So scalability and speed of adoption are much faster. So the change that we're talking about will be dramatic. I predict in this 10 years, by 2030, we'll have the equivalent of 50 years of industrial revolution that happened in the past. And so this will create a change that people are not ready for. And the surprising thing is the people who are knowledgeable of all this are the ones who are producing the change, who are the haves, who are the suppliers of AI. And most economists don't know enough to think about the impact on the economy. Most social scientists are not thinking about the impact on society. Most NGOs are not thinking about how AI will affect their particular area of work. People are doing so much good work in different NGOs, and they all ought to become AI savvy, but they're not. So I felt that this, the first encounter, the first battleground will create a disruption in society in very pragmatic ways, and it's going to unleash probably violence, probably communal violence, unrest. There'll be large amounts of people who feel that they've been disenfranchised, they've been left behind, and they will fight back in some way. So that's my first battleground.
That's fascinating, thank you. And you also talk about education and getting that right. Any nation that wants to be taught and self-determine their future with artificial intelligence. Do you have any thoughts on education? It seems like the whole system needs to change, Rajiv.
Yeah. So, the education which is being taught all over the world is largely past oriented. So a lot of it is about old stuff, rather than where the future is. And a lot of that is a kind of the economy that has existed till now, rather than the new economy. Companies say that they will retrain workers who are disrupted, but this takes a lot of money. And will have they set aside the money required to retrain millions of workers around the world? The reports I have read suggest that they have not. So what you'll find is the people who are in the middle of their careers will be considered uneducated or not sufficiently educated or educated without the relevant things, and they'll be discarded in some ways, or maybe their wages will go down, and some other people who are very talented will go up. You know, those who are privy to go to good colleges and universities in the world, in all countries, there are some communities like that, they'll do okay. I mean, I'm not, for instance, in the case of India, I'm not concerned about Bangalore, and I'm not concerned about the investors sitting in Mumbai. I mean, they'll probably make a lot of money, but I'm worrying about huge states with huge amounts of people. You know, and one of the things to think about in Battleground 1 is overpopulation. Overpopulation is a very big factor, because if India had only 200, 300, 400 million people rather than 1.3 billion, you could argue that, okay, retraining these people can be done. You know, you don't have to feed so many people, and providing for a smaller number of people is going to be okay. Machines will do much of the work, and you could more easily come up with a strategic plan to make the population happy, make them contented. But with the gigantic population that exists out there, you have to provide with, you know, clothing, food, medicine, water, clean water, housing, all kind of stuff for these people. Yeah. So this is quite a challenge, especially for overpopulated countries. This is a lot of South Asia like that, Southeast Asia is like that, parts of Africa like Nigeria like that. So the countries that are not very rich, I mean, it's one thing if you're Japan and you are populated, have a high population density, but you also have a lot of money and a lot of technology, so you're okay. But countries that don't have that wealth and don't have that sophistication, highly educated people, at the same time have a large number of people, human beings to feed, I think are going to get into serious trouble.
Yeah, I think these are fundamental subjects, this Battleground 1 that you've covered, and I think they're really important. So Rajiv, let us move on to Battleground 2, geopolitics and military. You discuss your thoughts on the US, China, and India. Can you tell us more about this important global battleground?
So, you know, the AI is going to bring in new kinds of weapons. Quantum computing will bring in ways of defeating the encryption and the security of anybody's network if they don't have a quantum computer and you do. And you'll be able to hack into their military systems and their energy grids and whatnot and create havoc there. So these are new forms of warfare, cyber warfare. Some of it has started, but a lot more is coming. And I think many countries are just not ready. I know for a fact India is not that ready as much as it should be. US is concerned. US also got hacked by the Russians with Cambridge Analytica and so on. And this is not an easy problem to solve. Once there's quantum computing, the problem will get even worse. But even physical weapons, you know, drones, robotic soldiers that fight without the human restrictions, underwater new, you know, drone submarines that are without pilots that are, you know, under the water. So all kinds of, you know, strategic, you know, collaborative weapon systems, large weapon systems that are automated, you know, that kind of have enough knowledge about the enemy, enough knowledge about one's own strengths and weaknesses to constantly optimize, re-optimize, and continue this war going. This kind of an automated warfare is so destructive potentially. You know, the scale of what can happen, the harm that can happen and the collateral damage of a whole lot of people is so huge. You know, we talk about nuclear disarmament, this will be much worse. This will be a bigger conversation. I don't know why the powers that started so much, have paid so much emphasis on nuclear disarmament, have not even started the conversation on this kind of weaponry. And there are no discussions in the United Nations or among the nuclear powers or other people to talk about the potentials for militarization of AI. It's very interesting, Matthew, that UN has not started a conversation saying, hey, you know, we have treaties that we won't weaponize the Antarctica, we will not militarize the moon. You know, we're talking about limitations on nuclear weapons. I mean, I know China is not part of that treaty, it's US and Russia, but at least those conversations exist and those mechanisms exist. But people have not started that conversation on the how to manage this weaponization of AI. Now that's quite interesting that nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, isn't it? And once again, well, let me ask you an additional question, if you don't mind, Rajiv. Do you think that artificial intelligence may actually solve the conflicts that we see between the West and the East? Do you think AI may actually come up with a solution that actually takes us beyond the conflicts we're under?
Yes. I mean, the thing is, if human beings are willing to give up the ego, that it all boils down to that. The individual ego that I'm Rajiv and I'm a billionaire and I want to become 100 billionaire and then a trillionaire. I mean, at some point, if I have a change in consciousness, that's a prerequisite that says, okay, enough of that. Now I got to do something else with myself. That's a prerequisite. And then the other prerequisite is collective identity, that I belong to this community or this nation or whatever this identity I have. I don't want that us as a group want to go after these other people and get more share of resources and so on. If there is a change of that heart, then I think AI becomes a great mechanism to carry it forward and, humanize humanity, if you will, make us more humane, like we should be. But as long as the character of the individual remains egotistical and power hungry, in the last 500 years, with so much technology, the character of the individual human hasn't necessarily become much better. I mean, if you look at horrible things that some people do in the world, and if you look at the meanness, the selfishness, the greed, infinite greed to accumulate, it hasn't been satiated just because now people have more of it. So it doesn't mean that they don't crave even more. So I don't know if humankind's character will change because of technology and because of overabundance. So far, it hasn't.
Yeah, that's a beautiful response. Thank you much. And I think what you're alluding to, what I'm hearing, is artificial intelligence itself is inviting a greater maturity in our humanity and our leadership. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, artificial intelligence is raising the stakes. It says if you're a mean world of selfish people, artificial intelligence will exacerbate the problems and help you destroy each other more. On the other hand, if you are good human beings, and you need ways to solve problems, you have lots of disease, you have hunger, you have all kinds of issues, you have distrust, and you're honestly, genuinely wanting AI to provide solutions, then AI can be a great ally. So AI is kind of value neutral and morally and ethically neutral. It depends on the character of the individuals that control it. So, one could have used the Industrial Revolution for very benevolent things. I mean, the industrial powers could have said, let's go to every one of these countries, instead of colonizing them, let's put our factories there. I mean, if the raw cotton comes from India, goes to England and goes to Manchester, turns into textiles, and we sell it back to India, why don't we set up some factories in India? So the French could have set up industries in Africa. They could have set up industries in Vietnam, all the places that the colonialists controlled. They could have said, we're all one humanity. Let's share our knowledge and what we have achieved with others. And then there would have been no colonial kind of era, and we would have been a happy family. That didn't happen. So I think while the potential is there, and of course the desire is there, we cannot be presumptuous and assume that that'll be the way things turn out.
Rajiv, tell us more about Battleground 3, the modernization of the masses, and what you also say is bowing down to the digital deities, Google, DeVita, Twitter, DeVita, and also the Facebook DeVita. Tell us more about this Battleground 3.
Okay, so Battleground 3 is my favorite, but I tucked it away so I don't give too much of a shock right in the beginning and chase my readers away. But I think once they understand it, they like it, they'll have a lot of fun. So, people love to say these machines are getting smarter and smarter, but the corollary to that is that humans are getting dumber, because it's a relative thing. And as we depend more on Google to tell us what we need to know, and Siri and Alexa And as we go to, Wikipedia knows everything. The human beings, especially very young kids, tell me, why do I need to learn anything? Whatever I need to know, I'll ask Google. I mean, I'll just ask Siri. Siri will tell me, why do I have to go to school and learn anything? Because they already know. Whatever is written in my textbooks, these machines know. I'll just pick up the thing and speak, and it'll tell me what I need to know. So this dumbing down as a kind of a glorified way of life, thinking that, I have this asset that has the knowledge I don't need to have. I could be a dumb guy. So this is what I'm calling moronization, means turning the world into morons. So morons are these dependent people that are like zombies, and they are on autopilot, and they are in default mode. You're running your life on default, the default choice. There's very sneaky things that Google has to kind of nudge you towards default choices. If you go to Google Calendar, and you set if you say 12:30 p.m., this thing with Matthew, then what'll happen is in the line which describes the event, it will remove the 12:30. It will just say event with Matthew, and then where it has time from to, it will put in the 12:30. So it's kind of doing me a favor by putting it where it wants rather than me being able to put it where I want. So it's, and if I want to override it, I have to do a lot of overriding to get it the way I feel like having it. So my aesthetics, my choice, my way of organizing my life is actually being subordinated, and it takes more effort for me to do it the way I want. It's easier for me to surrender and say, let Google just do it. But if I were to surrender on a trivial matter like this, the habit is more and more taking over your default or your life by default choices. So the system makes default choices for you. Soon, based on the AI and the knowledge about you, makes default choices for you. And then you begin to live your life more and more in default mode. As you live your life in default mode, you give up your free will, your ability and your interest to exercise choice, discretion. We have individual tastes. I happen to like a certain food. I don't care about you telling me I like a certain music. I don't want you to recommend, and I just go on and keep listening to whatever you play. I want to go and make my own choice of movie. I want to look at all kind of details about different movies and make my choices. And I don't want Netflix to just put me in autopilot where I'm sitting back and happy that they're making good choices for me. What has happened is when they look at research on consumers' attitude towards privacy issue vis-a-vis Alexa and all these listening devices. What is Alexa and all these listening devices? The ability to speak and get an answer back on your Google search. When they look at research on what do people think of all these, they find that the older people, my generation, maybe 10% of them are very happy and they don't mind all this. As you get younger and younger, the percentage goes up. But then the percentage shoots above 50% approval when you go to people who are born after the year 2000. So the people who are under the age of 20, their attitude is, what's wrong? If Google knows more about me than I know, well, Google should tell me what I should do. It should tell me who I should date, where I should go on vacation, what food I should eat. It should just do it for me. So basically, we are going in default mode, autopilot, and I call it the moronization. Now, what is wrong with it is that these people, such people, are intellectually easy to make slaves. It's easy to convert them to another point of view, to tell them where to vote, to give them some fake news and they'll go for it. To not only, if you can sell them what kind of shoes they should wear or what movie they should watch, you could even sell them political points of view. So this is a loss of agency. That's the battleground.
That's well observed. And I really enjoyed reading this section of the book. And I just want to ask you one or two other questions, Rajiv. You talk about psychology in this and a dopamine type of society, which you've just alluded to. And my question is this: are these Devitas literally reducing the intellectual prowess of, for example, the United States of America to be able to innovate its future? Is this dumbing down of the masses creating a kind of an intellectual and an educational and an innovation issue where they're not being able to do things like original thinking, critical thinking, or other types of thinking to actually innovate the future of America?
Yes. So I call it atrophy. Each time, Matthew, you go and delegate and outsource something, some faculty of yours to a machine, an algorithm, and each time I do that, then we are not exercising that part of our mind which we have evolved to do, and so it will atrophy. I mean, so a lot of senses, human senses like smell, have atrophied compared to the sense of smell that animals have, because we didn't need it for so much for survival. So as we stop using certain faculties, their sharpness declines. Now, this is something exactly an analogy with machine learning. Machine learning becomes sharper with more big data, more challenge, more diversity. If you throw millions of examples of big data at the machine, it remains sharp and becomes sharper. And if there's another machine that you don't have that much experience, you're not throwing so much big data at it, it's not going to be so sharp. Humans, think of a human being also as a learning system similar to machine learning. And the equivalent of big data is experience. And each time I look at a situation and I have to deal with it, and I have to make a choice, and I then find out, I get feedback whether it was a good choice or a bad choice, I learn. It's exactly the way machine learning happens. So just like having no big data or little big data atrophies a machine, the same is happening with human beings. So we need to think about the long-term evolutionary consequences of delegating too much to machines and becoming like dumbed down people. And in this book, I also fear in a later battleground that this evolves into a two-tier humanity between the ones who are very superior and the others who are sort of left behind. And what does that kind of society look like?
Thank you, Rajiv. And I think you call them superhuman, don't you?
Yes.
Which I think it ties into some of the past theories from Aristotle and others about superhumans. Rajiv, thank you for sharing with us your thoughts on Battleground 3. Let's look at Battleground 4 now. The loss of selfhood to artificial emotions and gratifications, the crash of civilization. Can you share more about this Battleground 4?
So, if I'm a yogi, and that's my reference point, I'm used to going inside and finding my bliss and finding my joy as a process inside. And it's not sensory delights and fixations and addictions and stimulation on the external side that my tradition encourages. So I become more self-sufficient within me. I find the joy and bliss that is built into every human being, every person. And it's not about external, dependencies. That's the Vedic view, the Buddhist, all the Dharma traditions are basically focusing on that. Now, the other approach is a very materialistic approach that I end up with less and less attention span because I need stimulation, I need excitement, I get bored easily. So whether it's substances that I need to consume, whether it is some movies or sensations, or somebody has to always hype and come up with something very intense to keep me happy. So that kind of an extroverted and driven by external agencies that are not controlled by me, but other systems, that is a loss of the selfhood as traditionally known. So this is a battle for self. Is the self going to be more like the yogi's idea of self? Or is the self going to be more like a whole lot of vendors selling me augmented reality and gloves and implants and all kind of apps that are going to keep me happy for the rest of my life, and make me more of a moron, so I can more dumb down, so I can be enjoying all this gratification. This battle for self, I think is dangerous because it seems like very inviting, very exciting. A lot of people say this is great because if AI can do this, we'll have no misery. The point is that you'll be happy slaves. I call them happy slaves. In Battleground 3, you're happy morons. And now you're actually happy slaves because you've given up your sovereignty to these things that you are dependent on. It can be somebody can pull the plug on you. Somebody can say that this guy, we won't give you this. And you have this, this withdrawal symptom all of a sudden. And people who are happy slaves, you know, they are not productive because the machines are doing all the work. They are dumbed down. In Battleground 3, they become dumbed down and machines have become smarter. And in Battleground 4, the self is now happy without having to do any, without having the normal human functions. You know, I can just be a happy zombie. So what will that lead to? I think one of the scary scenarios is that the people who have this technology, which is becoming more and more expensive, to augment your body and grow another heart and grow another. If your lungs fail, then you could grow a second set of lungs or transplant something. People with bionics, with you know, augmented bodies, augmented minds, may be able to live 150 years, 200 years, may be able to have X-ray vision, may be able to have telescopic vision, may be able to have all kinds of you know, capacities that normal humans don't have. And so this part human, part algorithm and machine entity, you know, could be like the superhuman. And what will this superhuman be thinking about the normal human who did not have the money to go and upgrade themselves, and who's sort of a moron, dumbed down, and who's living this autopilot life of kind of a happy slave? Well, they'll think of them like we think of animals, that these are a nice, cute lot. They're cute. And maybe go and pet them and have some nice conversation. And we think of our old heritage, you know, generations ago, we used to be like them, but we have evolved and these people have not. So what happens? Do we see a depopulation scenario? Do we see that if these superhumans are very egotistical and very selfish, they may say, these humans 1.0 are a nuisance. They are epidemic. Like we think of rats epidemic. These guys are eating up all the food. They're creating all this nonsense, having disease. They're spreading all this disease and virus, and they're creating global warming. And we, the superhumans, the human 2.0, we could run the world with very few people needed who need to work for us. The rest of them we don't need. So let's figure out a depopulation program. And this depopulation will be done in a very nice humanitarian way. Nobody's going to be killed in a gas chamber. We don't want to do all that. We don't want that kind of guilt. But we'll do it in a way that, you know, their birth rate goes down to very little. However we do it, with whatever vaccinations we do it, or however we do it, we also will keep them very happy. While their population depletes because they don't reproduce, we will keep them very happy with all this augmented reality. So the old human being will go down in population because, and in the meantime, we'll keep them happy. They won't complain, they won't protest and be violent. But the future world will belong to a small number of us. So you could have a disequilibrium for, you know, Battleground 3 might create a disequilibrium that lasts 1 or 2 generations. And at the end, you have a very small population of exceedingly advanced beings, but the rest of humanity kind of wiped out, except, you know, providing very quaint services. Now, this is futuristic. The rest of my things are now. They don't require futuristic technology. The Battleground 1, 2, 3 are now. Battleground 4 is starting now, but how far it will go, how fast it will grow is futuristic, but it is a topic of concern.
Thank you, Rajiv, for your insightful comments and wisdom on Battleground 4. Sounds like it's going to be a fascinating potential future for humanity. Tell us more about Battleground 5, stress testing the Indian Rashtra. Rashtra
is a sort of a loose translation of, or loose equivalent of nation. It's the collection, the India as a collection, as a group of people with a certain geography, a certain history, and a collective vested interest is the Indian Rashtra. I'm stress testing India in a sense, the modern India, and I'm doing it at the level of physical, you know, robustness, which is Battleground 1 and 2. The whole economy, unemployment kind of thing is Battleground 1, and can it withstand the military attacks that China is inevitably going to bring? That's Battleground 2. and battleground 3 being its own people being very colonized, being very scared, being very much addicted to feeling good, not willing to work too hard, very bored, very much sold out to these digital giants, not willing to stand up and fight, confused about who they are, all sorts of things that are part of the battleground 3. And battleground 4 is vulnerability to becoming like zombies, the loss of selfhood in a yogic sense. So basically, I'm stress testing India, applying these criteria. And the battleground 5 says that things are not looking good for India. This is nothing to do with my conviction that the future of humanity at large is Vedic. It has to do with the state of politics and society and leadership and media and intellectuals, etc. in India. It's a state of human beings that are out there in positions of authority and positions of importance. It is nothing to do with the ideals of the civilization. So while the ideals of the civilization are phenomenal and probably are the future, should be adopted by all of humanity, but I don't think India has done that. I think India is neither true to its own traditions nor Americanized properly. In the quest to become American, they are neither here nor there. They've stopped being who they are supposed to be. And they are in their quest to chase becoming Americans. They've done a lousy job. It's a cheap copycat, quite hilarious at times. And so India is sort of trapped in a place where it doesn't really have its own bearings. And this is, in a nutshell, my prognosis for where India stands. And it's not good news, but it's something that Indians need to take stock of.
Thank you, Rajiv, for discussing the 5 battlegrounds. So quickly, is the battleground the same for each nation? I.e., does each nation have 5 battlegrounds? And are the tactics the same or different for each nation? Can you share some of your thoughts on that, please?
So I would say that battlegrounds 1 and 2, which have to do with the physical level of your infrastructure, your economy, your unemployment, this is applicable everywhere. Battleground 2, the geopolitical security is applicable. And similarly, 3 and 4, which are the inner realm of the individual, is applicable. When I was writing this book, like all my books, I give it to many people to review and critique and give back comments. So many people, almost every single person, every single American who looked at it said, you know, your battleground 5 should be United States because all this applies to USA. So many people said, why you'll have a big hit if you make a critique of the United States using your 4 battlegrounds as a reference point. And I promised them, and I'll do that. I definitely want to go back and write another book, which is US centric rather than India centric. I feel that I would love to collaborate with people from various countries who have a knowledge of their particular country, and we could do their battleground 5, summarize battlegrounds 1 through 4, rewrite some of it, and put in the battleground 5 from their particular country. I really believe that something similar needs to be done for every nation, every country. And certainly I want to do this for the United States. So it's not necessarily India specific. It's the case study happens to be India in this book, but equally you could do a case study for Mexico, or you could do a case study for Brazil or any place like that. You could do this for European Union or Britain. And look at what happens, where do they stand in these first 4 battlegrounds? And battleground 5 would be, putting it all together in terms of that particular nation state, how robust it is it going to get into disequilibrium, is it going to fall apart, and so on. For instance, I have a thesis that I developed in India long ago called Breaking India, which says what are the forces that are fissiparous forces that are pulling India apart. And I now have this thing called Breaking India 2.0, which says that with artificial intelligence, those forces could get worse because they can all use AI and pull India apart. Let me just share with you, I also have a thesis called Breaking America. I haven't talked about it, but if someone were to ask me what will happen to America in 2035, I would be saying there's different scenarios. There is that scenario. It could go Vedic. There is that scenario. There's that scenario. And one of the scenarios is the Breaking America scenario. Because what is happening is also what has happened in India with the Breaking India is also happening in the United States to some extent, with different forces wanting to not have anything to do with each other. And they're really at loggerheads. And, they're all aligned with some international group somewhere that they feel they're part of. And that is more important to them than being together as Americans. I think that the United States is exceedingly powerful, and the Breaking America scenario will not play out, but it's certainly going to try. And so there are all these ways, very interesting ways to analyze different countries in the light of this 5 battleground framework that I have developed. So think of it as a framework that social thinkers, political thinkers could teach in their class and say, okay, understand this framework and pick a country in the world that you know about and apply it to that. And what is a 10-year scenario for using AI and all these technologies? What's a 10-year scenario for that particular country? I think you will have some very interesting research if people tried that.
Thank you, Rajiv. And one final question. And by the way, that sounds really fun. I think it should be maybe part of the curriculum that's taught in universities for people to run these 10-year scenarios in your 5 battlegrounds. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your book beyond the 5 battles? Because I know there's a lot in there. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, the book is having a great reception among people who are very thoughtful and very creative. I'm finding young people very interested in this. At the same time, I'm finding the very established, mature, grown-up people, powerful people shaken up a little bit. I mean, they're so used to telling a lie to their constituents. Some political people are telling a lie. They don't want to talk about these issues. They want to talk about how great everything is. Because God forbid, if they were to admit there are problems, then people expect them to solve those problems. And I'm finding that the people in leadership positions are not that open to having this conversation. So we'll see where it will go. I will continue persisting. And I have more and more people with open minds, not largely young, but also some grown-up, more mature people who think that the time has come to step out of our comfort zone, to forget the old allegiances that we had and look at the world from a fresh perspective. And so such people are joining me and aligned with me. I'm delighted to be able to create this movement of like-minded people. So it's still very fresh. The book has been out 2 months and already gained so much traction. I think that as my future volumes come, this will be a movement which will truly be the conversation of the decade, as you put it.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much for your thoughts and insights about this book. It's for those that are listening, I believe this book is the pillar of the conversation for the next decade. And so please do check it out. And it's my belief that every single nation, every single business, all academic institutions, citizens, philosophers, yogis, spiritual leaders, this is a conversation that should be included of everybody to self-determine a beneficial future with artificial intelligence. And this book seriously is an exceptional and a remarkable piece of work. And I recommend that everybody buys this book and starts to consider seriously how they want to participate in the future of artificial intelligence and what their legacy will be for the world. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you very much. And namaste to you.